Get out of my house, you uneducated trash. My father's voice echoed through the living room so loudly that even the neighbors probably heard it. You're 30 years old and still a failure, he shouted. Your brother has degrees. Your sister has a respected career. And you're an embarrassment. My mother stood beside him and nodded. Not one person defended me, not even after everything I had quietly done for this family. So, I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't remind them who had paid their medical bills last year. I didn't tell them why I spent so much time working behind a laptop. Instead, I packed one suitcase, walked out the front door, and simply said, "Okay, take care of yourselves." 3 weeks later, my father received a phone call that turned white as paper. Then my mother started crying, because the daughter they called uneducated trash wasn't broke at all. And the truth was about to cost them everything. My name is Emily Carter, and I was 30 years old the night my father threw me out of his house. To be fair, he never really considered it my house. I had moved back in 2 years earlier after selling a small apartment. According to my parents, that decision proved I had failed at life. My family worshipped degrees. My older brother, Daniel, was a surgeon. My younger sister, Rebecca, was a corporate attorney. Every family gathering felt like an award ceremony for them and a public trial for me. Daniel saves lives. Rebecca argues million-dollar cases. Then someone would eventually ask, and what exactly does Emily do all day? The answer was always the same. I work online. That response usually earned eye rolls. What nobody knew was that I owned a software company that developed inventory management tools for small businesses across North America. I had started it 7 years earlier from a tiny apartment and a second-hand laptop. The company now generated millions in annual revenue. But I never talked about money. I preferred privacy. My parents mistook privacy for failure. The final explosion happened during Sunday dinner. My father had spent most of the evening praising my siblings. Then he turned toward me. "You know what's wrong with you?" he asked. The room went quiet. "You wasted your potential." I calmly continued eating. "You never finished college. You sit behind a computer all day. Nobody even knows what you do." My mother nodded. "Your brother and sister contribute something meaningful." I set down my fork. "I support myself just fine." Dad laughed. "Support yourself? You're living here at 30. The truth was I paid most of their household expenses without telling them, including property taxes and several medical bills. But I stayed silent. That seemed to irritate him even more. Finally, he slammed his hand onto the table. "Get out of my house, you lowlife." My mother didn't object. Neither did my siblings. For a moment, I looked around the table and realized nobody there actually knew me. "Okay," I said quietly. That answer surprised everyone. I packed one suitcase that night. The next morning, I left without another word. 3 hours later, I used a private elevator to enter the penthouse I owned downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. As I stood there watching the skyline, my phone buzzed. A family group message appeared. Dad had written one sentence. "Maybe this will finally teach her responsibility." The first week after leaving my parents' house felt strangely peaceful. No criticism. No comparisons. No lectures about college degrees. For the first time in years, I woke up without feeling like I had to defend my existence. My company headquarters occupied 2 floors of a glass office building downtown. Most people assumed I was just another executive. None of them knew that every major decision still passed across my desk. 7 years earlier, I had built the business from scratch. Now it served thousands of clients and employed more than 100 people. The company was growing faster than I had ever imagined. Meanwhile, my family continued living as if I had disappeared. I heard occasional updates through relatives. Apparently, Dad enjoyed telling people that I was finally learning how difficult life was. Then, everything changed. 3 weeks after I moved out, my father's construction supply business lost its largest commercial contract. The cancellation happened unexpectedly. Within days, cash flow problems started appearing. Several vendors demanded payment. Loans became difficult to manage. The business that had supported my parents for decades suddenly looked unstable. Dad immediately called Daniel. My brother claimed he was too busy. Then he called Rebecca. She explained that her own expenses were overwhelming. For the first time, the children my parents had always celebrated couldn't rescue them. While all of that was happening, something else occurred. A regional business magazine published its annual feature on successful entrepreneurs. The cover showed a photograph of me standing in front of my company's headquarters. The headline read, "Emily Carter, the self-taught founder transforming small business technology." The article spread quickly. Friends of my parents began calling. Neighbors stopped them outside grocery stores. Former coworkers congratulated them. At first, Dad insisted there had to be some mistake. According to him, I was unemployed and irresponsible. Then someone emailed him the article. Another person sent a link to public company records, revenue figures, property ownership records, business awards. Everything was there. The truth was impossible to ignore. The daughter they had called uneducated trash owned a thriving company, several investment properties, and assets worth far more than they had ever imagined. 2 days later, I was finishing a board meeting when my assistant entered the conference room. Her expression seemed confused. "Emily," she said carefully, "there's a man downstairs asking for you." I closed my laptop. "Who is it?" She hesitated. Then she answered. "He says he's your father." And suddenly, I knew exactly why he had come. I found my father standing in the lobby of my office building. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The last time I had seen him, he was pointing toward the front door of his house and telling me to leave. Now he looked uncomfortable, smaller somehow. "Emily," he said quietly. I nodded. "Dad." The security guard glanced between us, clearly sensing the tension. I led my father upstairs to a private conference room overlooking the city. As soon as the door closed, he stared through the glass windows. "You own all this?" "I do." He slowly sat down. A few moments later, my mother arrived. Apparently, she had been waiting downstairs. Neither looked like the confident people who had judged me for years. Mom folded her hands. "We owe you an apology." I remained silent. Dad cleared his throat. "When we saw the article, we couldn't believe it." "I know. We thought you were struggling. You never asked." The room became quiet. That simple sentence seemed to hit harder than anything else. For years they had assumed they knew everything about me. They never asked about my work, never asked about my goals, never asked what I was building. They had already decided who I was. Dad looked down. "I thought success came from degrees, titles, and traditional careers. And because I didn't follow that path, you assumed I was a failure." He nodded. Slowly, painfully. Mom's eyes filled with tears. "We were wrong." I believed she meant it. But some truths arrived too late. Dad finally looked up. "The business is struggling. We're trying to figure things out." There it was. The real reason for the visit. Not just regret. Need. I leaned back in my chair. "I don't hate either of you." Both looked relieved. Then I continued. "But I'm not going to become valuable only because you discovered I have money." The relief disappeared. "You spent years measuring people by status. When you thought I had none, you treated me like I didn't matter." Neither argued, because neither could. I stood and walked toward the window. The city stretched beneath us. Everything I had built stood there, because I refused to quit when nobody believed in me, including my own family. After several minutes, Dad stood. "I'm sorry, Emily." This time, I believed him. But forgiveness and trust were different things. They left shortly afterward. As the elevator doors closed behind them, I felt something unexpected. Not anger, not revenge. Freedom. For the first time in my life, I no longer needed anyone's approval to know my worth.